Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about why Linux needs fragmentation and why fragmentation is actually a pretty good thing in my opinion. Like, a lot of new Linux users often think that Linux is too fragmented, there are too many distributions, there are too many package managers, and they just want something for everyone, So they don't want like Void Linux existing and Arch Linux and Debian. They want like one universal, how can I say, Linux distribution, and that uses the same init system. I assume system D because people just love system D, and they just want something like Windows, I guess. Like it's the same everywhere, the same apps work everywhere, and a lot of people say, well, that's good. What do you have against that? And the problem they have is that one, you would need a universal package manager. So a lot of people try to use like snaps or flatpaks, but they aren't really good. Like snaps are reliant on systemd. The package manager itself is closed source, which isn't really a problem for me or for people because it also makes sense. So it's closed source. It's so it's a little more official, I guess. But the biggest problem is that one, it's made for a systemd only system. So I don't think it can work without systemd, which obviously reduces the choice of distributions you can make. For example, if I wanted to run snaps on Void, I couldn't. So if there wasn't like XPBS, what would I do in Void? Install Flatpaks. Now Flatpaks are a little better than snaps because you can actually use them on non-systemd distributions, which is good obviously. But also one of the problems is that it's very kind of sandbox. It's not secure. Like a lot of people think that sandbox means secure. That's not true. Um, Flatpak still can have access to like your main system. There are some apps that can block that, so that's good, I guess, if you really want to be very secure. But the problem is that because they are so sandbox, they don't actually respect your theme, um, your configurations, and they cannot interact so well with your system. They don't get upgrades when you update your system, for example. Sometimes when you update your graphic drivers, they break. They're just really annoying, and I think that why people like this is because they're kind of like .exe files on Windows. We just download them from like a website. Here is like FlatHub, um, and people really like that because they can just search that like their little closed source applications. They search like Discord and other apps like this, and they're like, wow, it works. But they just aren't really good, and they have some vulnerabilities as well. And overall, they're not as good as a true package manager. Let's say you cannot upgrade it when you upgrade your system, and it's overall kind of annoying. Um, for example, one package manager that I like is Pac-Man, and XPPS on Void is also good. Even APT is okay, and these are good package managers because they're integrated to your system. Snaps and Flatpaks aren't integrated to your system. They're just kind of like in Windows, that exe files. They just are not really, how can I say, they're not really software integrated. They're not like MS Paint or something. They're just random apps that you download off the internet. You aren't entirely sure if they are viruses or not. You just download them and check it out. So snaps and flatpaks just aren't as good, and they reduce the choice by a lot. And people that want this to be like the universal ones are really, really maybe not knowledgeable enough about Linux. It reduces the choice a lot. right? So also another point that which I have is that it would literally be impossible to do. There are many Linux distributions right now and many package managers, and people don't want to change these things. For example, if an Arch user probably likes Pac-Man, Run It user on Void Linux likes Run It, not systemd, and they like XPPS and XPPS slash SRC, stuff like that. And literally, it would be possible to just delete all these distributions. We couldn't just like delete Ubuntu because a lot of people use Ubuntu. We couldn't delete like all Linux distributions and make a universal one because everybody that's running Linux probably either change on it because it wouldn't be reliable for servers, and Linux is really important servers. If we like do this, we could literally kind of break everything that Linux has, which would be dumb. um, and also a lot of people just change to Linux for this. They want choice. They don't want to be like Windows where Microsoft just like makes a new update and you have to like accept it. The nature of Linux is that you can fork projects and stuff like this. But if you have one universal one, how could you even fork it, right? Like you would fork it, but that would mean that it's no longer like the only distribution. So people once again could make their own package managers and stuff, and it would just go and on and on. It's not something that you can really control, and the only thing that you can do is just close source a project, but it's no longer Linux really. People just switch to like BSD because it wouldn't allow for choice, and this obviously is really really bad. So this is why I think that a universal package manager and a universal distribution just wouldn't work, because people switch to Linux so they can have choice. They don't want to use like let's say X distribution, alright? We'll call it um, I don't know, system Linux, something like this, alright? System Linux is now like the only distribution that exists, right? And that's the only distribution that exists. And you have like the package manager, let's say it's LX, okay? We just have to use something like LX, or we could just use snaps, for example. Let's say that this system Linux distribution uses um, snaps, right? So that means that it also has to use systemd, alright? So we use systemd, we use this snaps, and we also use this universal Linux distribution. Alright, well now that if you don't want people to fork them, you need to actually make them closed source, right? So, because otherwise people just make like a new distribution with them. Just make like a Linux system too, something like this. So this is why it would be impossible. Fragmentation is good because fragmentation allows Linux to be Linux. It's choice. If I want to run something with Runit or S6, I can do it. If I want to run Debian or Arch Linux with systemd, I can do it. If I want to run Ubuntu, I can. If I want to run Fedora, I, you know, people probably use Fedora. You might want to do that. I know that Fedora thing, I think it released something like Fedora Silverblue. That's something that runs only like with Flatpaks, I think. And this is like an example of like a distribution that tries to do this. But not so many people use it, and if you use Fedora Silverblue and use like only Flatpaks because I don't know, they say it's secure, then I guess it works for you, but I think it's harder to manage. I think it's just overall kind of like a pain to use that, and obviously not everyone would want to use that. Maybe someone would want to use snaps instead of flatpaks, right? Maybe just do that, and you fork the project and make a Fedora snaps blue, something like this, and boom, now you have two distributions. So this is something that new Linux users really want, but it's impossible to have. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Goodbye.